Hi, I'm Kelsey with M Bloom Felt Studio, and today I'll be showing you how to make a felt daffodil. You can find the pattern for this in my Etsy shop, but this video will show you the assembly only. Let's go over some of the materials that you'll need to make your daffodil. Choose the colors that you'd like to make your daffodil in. I'm making my petals a light yellow, the center cone is a bright yellow, a mossy green for your leaves, and you'll need a little bit of light brown. You'll also need artificial flower stamens for the center of the flower. I'm using a fixed stem for my stem, 3 22 gauge wires. You'll also need fabric scissors, wire cutters, floral tape, a hot glue gun and hot glue. Some optional tools that you can use to add some realism to your flower are a heat tool like a soldering iron to add lines to your petals, and to add color I'm using a bright yellow, orange, and red. I'm going to use an airbrush, but you can use whatever you're most comfortable with, such as pan pastel, watercolor, or eyeshadow. I know that's a lot, but we've got you covered. In the description below, you'll see my full stylus with links to everything, and that's also available on my written tutorial. Let's get started.
The first thing I do when my pieces are all cut out is organize them into piles. We're first going to make the very center of our flower using our artificial stamens. So grab a small piece of felt the same color as your center cone piece, and then I'm going to put everything else to the side. Okay, we're going to use 4 of these individual stamens and then cut a very small rectangle about 1 inch by a 1/4 inch long. Next, we're going to add it to our stem. I'm using a thicker 2 millimeter stem here. You can also glue 3 18 gauge wires together if that's what you have on hand, but I like using this thicker stem ready to go. So here's my 4 pieces. I'm going to fold them in half, hold it together by pinching the bottom, and then to add to my stem, I'm going to add a small amount of glue here, not a big glob, just enough to hold it. And I'm going to position my stamens so they're about halfway onto this rectangle. So my bottom is sticking out, and that's okay. And I'm just going to hold that in place so it sticks. Position your stem on top, and then you're going to wrap this tightly around your stem. I'm pulling very tight so it doesn't slip off. Secure with glue, and then I'm going to add some glue along the bottom too, just for extra stability. This will be the very center of our flower. Set it aside for now, and we're going to work on our cone shape. To make the cone, you're going to cut a wavy line along the ridge line. This is to make it look more natural. And then we're going to add some color. I'm going to demonstrate how to do that with the airbrush.
This optional step adds dimension to your flower. I'm going to use my airbrush to add color, but again, you can use another method if that works best for you. I'm mixing orange and red together to add some color around the center of my cone, and I'm using a bright yellow on the bottom of my petals. Here's how I did that. I'm going to add an orange-red color along the ridge line here. If you are adding color to your cone, just make sure that you flip it over and do both sides. Here's what that will look like. Here's what this piece looks like after I've added color. Again, you can use pan pastels, watercolor, eyeshadow, whatever you like the best.
And now we're going to add a little bit more texture to the ridge of the cone. So I am twisting the top between my thumb and index fingers. I'm also going to go back the opposite way that I just twisted. And this will create a wavy edge like that. To glue it onto the center of your flower, you're going to add a little bit of glue here, and then the way that these are folded, you're going to meet both of these edge corners around the center. First, I'll add my glue. Position it so it's at the top of that felt. Once it's attached, I also scrunch the top up just a little bit to add some more wave. And here's what that looks like.
My next step is to add lines to my petals using my soldering iron. You can skip this section if you're sticking to the basic flower design.
First, sort your petals into two piles. I have my slightly smaller ones here and my larger ones on the bottom. Just going to move them out of the way, but I do like to keep them in their own little piles so I don't get them confused. The tip of your petal is the more narrow curve and the bottom is the wide curve, so keep that in mind. Once your tip is heated up, you're going to very carefully press the tip at the top of the petal and work your way down to the bottom. So here's what it will look like after you've added some lines. The iron also makes a nice soft curve on the petal, which I like. So continue that process until all 6 of your petals have lines if you choose to do that step. I'm going to add a bright yellow color to each of my petals. I'm going to add the color to the bottom edge and then fading it out towards the middle. When you add color to your petals, make sure you add it on both sides. Here's what that will look like. Once you've added lines and color to your petals, it's time to start gluing them onto the flower. These will be glued on in a triangle shape, evenly spaced around the flower. Starting with the small petals, we're going to add glue to the bottom edge with the lines facing up. And then we're going to glue these on at the bottom of the cone so it will cover up the strings of the stamens that are sticking out on the bottom. I'm just pinching this around the stem, and I'll add the others in the same way. Next, we're going to add our 3 larger pieces in between the spaces of the first 3 petals. And here's what that looks like when the petals are added on. Next, let's do our leaves. There are 3 leaf sizes, large, medium, and small, 2 in each size. We're going to add a line of glue down the middle of one of the leaves and add a 22 gauge wire on top of that line of glue. This is just to hold it in place. And now we're going to add glue along the outer edge, as close to the edge as you can get without the glue smooshing out the side, because we're going to sandwich this wire with the other leaf on top. And then we're going to add glue in small sections on the other side. I can go back and connect this here. It's probably best to work in small sections so the glue doesn't dry. When your 2 leaves are glued together, you can bend it to create a more natural look. Repeat the process with the next 2 leaves. Now I have my 3 leaves attached to their stems. I'm going to add them to my daffodil. I'm going to clip my daffodil so it's about 9 or 10 inches tall, and then I can line up the leaves so they're almost reaching the tip. Position your 3 leaves about 2 inches above the bottom of your stem and use floral tape to tape them. I'm going to continue wrapping my tape about 1 inch below the bottom, and I just find that that helps the tape not unravel later. And I'll clip it at the bottom of my thick stem. So now I can move my leaves in any direction. The very last step is to add our spathe to our stem. This is the papery part of the daffodil that protects the bud before it blooms. So I'm going to add mine near the very tip, and I'm going to bend my stem and then add it right here. I'm going to twist it a little bit so it has a natural shape. Add glue to the bottom and then glue it onto the stem. And here is our completed daffodil.
Now you know how to make a realistic felt daffodil. Thanks so much for crafting with me, and make sure to subscribe to my page for more tutorials.